Hey, everybody, welcome back. PowerHouse Fence Show. We are in the house. I'm Zach Shue. The other host, got Dan Turbyville to my left, the host. Got my trusty Rio Grande insulated cup here. Thank you, Derek of Rio Grande Fence, for giving us the swag when we were out there at Fence Tech. We went and stopped by Rio Grande Fence. We talked about that on one of the episodes. And
yeah, we went and hung out with them a while.
Super hospitable. What a cool operation they got going on.
Yeah.
Pretty inspiring visit. I mean, there's some of the stuff I was like, I hope to be able to do that.
Yeah, it was pretty inspiring. What changes have we made since we've been there?
It's a good question.
Right.
Well, I think the one thing that we've done, which is on our next agenda our agenda for our next company meeting, is to discuss uniformity, which is a big thing. That was one of the things that we really appreciated that Derek was doing, is when his guys are higher on, they get to go basically to the company store and go shopping for their outfit, which then again obviously is branding and advertising for the company, marketing. But also, I mean, I like that it's like bringing them into the fold.
Yep. And everything is the color.
Right.
That's pretty cool. Like, there's one color that's acceptable. Oh, right. No. This fly is back to haunt us again. So I got to tell you, you weren't here last week, and this stupid fly flying around dive bombed me the whole time. And it was like, it would go attack Ilaria a little bit. It would come back and attack me, and it was trying to eat our brains, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
So I'm very happy today because Zach is back, and I don't have to sit here and ramble for an hour staring at a camera.
I am happy to be back. It feels like a long time. Missing a week seems like a long time.
Oh, the week you were not here seemed like a long time.
That seemed like a week.
Right. No, just the hour seemed like a week.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Well, I don't know. Did they know where I was?
Yeah, I told them last week.
Okay. Well, you guys know where I was.
Yeah. Out there on a job site, getting it done.
Yeah, I was stressing out a little bit, and I sent my team. I was going to send my team out, and I did send them. And then about an hour later, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out and hands-on.
I can't handle this. I have to go see, that kind of thing.
Something like that. And it's not about not trusting them, but honestly, I really wanted to make sure it got done in a timely fashion. We had a pretty tight deadline, and I wanted to be able to, commit to the superintendent that I did everything I could to ensure that we met the deadline.
Yep. It was a deadline for a big customer. A lot of anxiety and anticipation and all of that stuff
on
trying
all
to
parts,
get it done. Yeah.
Not just the general contractor, but also the customer, and everyone is, up in arms and anxious. They had a big grand opening, and that was the pressing part of that.
Yeah. This was the gate that we talked about, like, I don't know, a month ago, that we built and they were failing and we had to replace them and all that stuff. So yeah, pretty big deal.
Happy to be back. Thank you guys for hanging in there. You, Dan, and Ilaria for holding it down. And then everybody who's, I know you're sad without me out there, all my fans.
Yeah, for sure. But we made it, man. So who's presenting this show?
This show happens to be presented by Memphis Fence Company, MFC, MFG, Simpalo, Thornton Fence Consulting Group.
That's right. So Tony Thornton just finished up a summit at Job Nimbus. I think there was about 20 or so people that went to that. And I was a little bit jealous that we were not there, because it would be a great time to be around the Salt Lake City area right now and go sneak away and find some ski slopes. So that was pretty cool. We put a link to Tony's events that he has coming up in the description. I hope we did that properly.
Fantastic idea.
So I think it's a link to his, schedule for the year. So it should have everything in there. You can check it out.
We're here. We're live. It's 5.
We are.
The phone number's scrolling down below. Check it out. If you like, I'll call it out. 901-878-4987. 901-878-4987.
Nailed it. So we are taking calls, although why does nobody ever call? It's kind of a weird thing to call into. I mean, it's like calling a radio show. Maybe we need to do a contest.
I think because we used to listen to that.
We need to do a contest. Be like, the 9th caller today wins a T-shirt or something.
Not today.
Not today. No. But Anyways, as always, thank you, listeners. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting us, and let us know what you want to hear.
Yeah, we're doing it for you.
It's for
Couldn't
you.
without you. Couldn't do it without you.
Yeah.
What have you been reading, man? You still working on the same stuff, new stuff?
I've been kind of
anything?
hung up on the Founders podcast
Still?
a little bit. Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
he's going through this book, and I'm terrible at names, but I think the guy who wrote the book is like David Oglesby.
Okay.
And
You-
it's the book was written to be like internal in their organization, and somehow it wound up being published, but it's really hard to find. And so the guy from the Founders podcast said the book was like $95 or something like that, and it's like a little 50-page long thing. But I kind of want to check it out. Like there's seems like there's a lot of good stuff in there.
And what did he found?
No idea.
Did he find anything?
Alyssa wants to hear us do a duet.
Oh,
What?
she's back.
A duet of what?
Interesting.
All right. We're gonna just skip that.
Not that kind of show, ma'am.
Tune into the next channel.
I'm still working my way slowly through the Toyota way.
You've been working on it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A little bit, and I've really gotten into. I talked about basically the life story, and then a long series of presentations by Baba Ram Das, formerly Richard Alpert.
What?
Yeah, he converted to Hinduism or whatever.
Oh.
Went to India, studied and lived whatever you do under a guru, and then came back. Baba Ram Das.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's an interesting character. He
Yeah.
does basically it's mindfulness teachings and Hinduism from the perspective of a person who was raised in the United States, and kind of how that cross pollinates, I guess.
Is that in Toyota Way?
Now,
this is something else.
The other podcast.
Okay,
the one
okay.
that I've been spending more time, become more interested in.
Well, no offense to anybody, but I mean, Toyota Way
It's grueling.
It's a little tough.
And the one that I'm listening to, the narrator is quite monotone.
So imagine me narrating a book that's full of great content. It's not that bad, but it's not that bad. I'll just leave it at that. So I have no idea what this Oglesby
I started
dude founded.
doing the micro learning thing.
Did you?
Yeah. So in the folder with my social media apps, I now have a little app that's called Headway.
Do this first.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called Headway, and it's just little 15-minute summaries of books.
Yeah.
The first one I read was a biography of Michelle Obama's life. I'm not choosing these, so I was like, I would never have picked this off a shelf,
Right,
but
right.
it's pretty cool.
It just happened that way.
And then the next thing was some business advice. You select basically the categories you're interested in.
And you selected Michelle Obama?
I guess so.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to check that out. That's pretty cool too. Instead of just mindlessly scrolling through some sort of social media.
So when I go to tap on Instagram, instead I tap that and do a little reading.
I get stuck in YouTube, and I just go down that rabbit hole and wind up watching the weirdest things.
That's the ones I receive at 2 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. And then I come in here super tired. I'm like, I don't know why I'm so tired. Yeah. All right. So the next event we're going to be attending, we are going to our local AFA chapter meeting. Our local AFA chapter is the Memphis Tri-State Fence Association. I don't really know when the meeting is. Supposed to be sometime here in the next couple of weeks, I'm told, but we plan to go to that. And
I'm hoping to add some, excitement, some new energy.
Yeah.
Some creativity.
Yeah, we have ideas for our local chapter, but we don't want to get into that yet. It's premature.
Well, that's what I mean. The energy is the thing for me.
Mhm.
From what I understand, it's been pretty similar and been the same for a while. And I think
I believe so.
we could come. I'd be new, so there would at least be that aspect of some new blood, so to speak. And so I'm looking forward to it. I've had a really good experience with the Northeast chapter, and then obviously Fence Tech was pretty impressive. Made a big impression on me, and I think it's cool to get involved on our local level.
So we have a decent bit of people that listen to the show that are local, at least according to the analytics. So if you are local, come check it out. Come join us, and let's see if we can bring some new energy and ideas into this local chapter here.
Then following this local meeting, There will be May 17th and 18th. We're going to go to the golf tournament, which is the annual meetup for the Memphis Tri-State Fence Association. It's in Tunica, Mississippi. They
Yep.
do have a Facebook page, the Memphis Tri-State Fence Association, if you want any information about that.
The link to register to that event or to sponsor it or anything else is in the description of this as well.
Fantastic.
So, but yeah, as people come, a lot of people go to that thing. I think last year they said there was like 165 people that played golf.
Cool.
And, so there's obviously people there that do not play golf as well. So I think it's a pretty decent crowd. So again, if you're local, check it out. If
So
you're not, come anyway.
Schedule breaks down something like Friday practice round, Saturday tournament. There's a reception Friday night, steak dinner, and award ceremony on Saturday night. Again, there's a link in the description.
Yep.
We're pretty stoked.
Yep. And then after that, we'll be heading to the West Coast. Regional trade show over there.
To it.
Yeah.
In Reno, Nevada.
Which also has a golf tournament and educational stuff and classes and all of that kind of rolled up into one event out there.
So Fence Tech was my first experience playing golf with anyone. It wasn't playing golf. We hit golf balls at Top Golf.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, I was like, this is I think I might have swung the club with my grandfather in, say the 90s or something.
Mm-hmm.
So a child, right? So, I did okay towards the end there, but I can't imagine having to play through, 9 or 18 holes for that matter.
Yeah. So swing the club 100 times,
It's not that, it's the people having to wait or pass me by or,
Right.
Sorry. Zach, why'd you get in at 1 a.m.? Well, I was finishing the 18 holes of golf.
Yeah, I know I started at 7 a.m. yesterday.
I'm just a very committed guy. I couldn't just call it quit.
I used to play on the golf team when I was in high school and played golf. I mean, not a ton, and I wasn't great at it, but like I could play golf successfully.
Yeah.
And now I can't, like, at all. I can't even hit a driver or nothing.
When you said play golf in high school, my wife took bowling in college. And so when you said that, I don't know why, but just immediately her voice of teaching me how to throw a bowling ball, which her suggestion was to hold it like a suitcase, throw it like a suitcase, which who throws suitcases?
Right.
So am I going to, that's my instructions for golf now. I'm going to try that out. Hit it like throwing a suitcase.
So I want to talk about Simpalo here just for a minute. We've hosted a multitude of other software companies. We have our own, and we never really talk about it. And I'm not going down that whole rabbit hole right now. What I did want to say is I've been looking at the analytics on the website, and then there's a bunch of traffic on there. And a lot of people are going on there, spending a decent amount of time reading stuff and watching videos and whatnot. But then that's like the end of it. And I saw one of the related Google searches or whatever said Simpalo Fence software download. Well, it's cloud-based, so there's not really a download, but I just wanted to tell everyone, I mean, if you want to see it, you can schedule a demo. There are some YouTube videos out there. I haven't done a really great job at that, to be honest with you, but there are some. I've been working on improving the website, adding more content in there. So I've worked on that this week. And if you want a demo, you can schedule a demo. And the worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to get some follow-up emails or whatever. I'm not going to harass you and call you and all of that. So if you want to see it, just schedule a demo. And I mean, I can show you what it does. I like doing the demos instead of just letting people jump in there, because I like to have the opportunity to see if it's the right fit for people. Right? I don't want just everyone in the world to sign up for it. I only want people who are actually going to benefit and get the value that's there to come sign up for it. And so that's kind of the reason why I like everything to come through us. But yeah, check it out. There's a few buttons on the website that say schedule a demo. There is one that says just sign up, but you still come through me if you want to sign up. But it'll kind of let you bypass that demo piece of it at least. So anyways, that's my bit. That's all I wanted to say.
Next week, I'm sure everyone's been anxiously waiting that the week that they don't get just us. There's going to be a guest. And so this is out in the open. I'll announce the guest.
I put it in here.
All right, it's in there, baby. So we're going to have Joe Everest of Ozark Fence.
Yeah.
Also has a podcast.
Yeah. People may have heard of him.
Joe Everest. Oh, I never heard of him.
Oh.
That's not kidding. I'm kidding. That's not serious. I met Joe Everest at a couple of the trade shows, but that is about the extent of my knowledge. I hear that his podcast has a significant amount of followers and kind of a big deal. And ultimately, my impression was not, knowing he had a lot of clout in the social media world, but just meeting him in person and truly just a nice guy. So
he is.
That was my impression. And then I found out, that guy is famous.
Yeah,
they call him.
That's the Podfather
Right,
you're talking to,
right.
The Podfather.
Yeah. So
I love it. I love just walking around clueless, and I meet these people that you have mad respect for, and I'm just kind of like, hey man, how's it going? I'm Zach Shue, Mr. Nobody.
So on February 26, 2024, he got an award for 20 million views.
Wow.
I think on YouTube.
Cool.
And February 21st, he got an award for 60,000 subscribers.
Give us a million. I mean,
isn't that crazy?
Just give us a million views.
Yeah, just send a million over. That's all we need.
Wouldn't it be cool if we could just share followers and views?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems.
Yeah, so we'll be live. We'll be taking phone calls, answering comments, all of that stuff like normal. And basically, my goal is to kind of pick his brain and see how we can improve our show. And maybe get some tips on our like social media presence and marketing and all of that stuff. So
the one thing that I remember him saying was, nope, that wasn't him.
Oh,
so
all right.
I want you to tell me a story, Dan.
You want me to tell you a story?
Yeah, man.
What kind of story you want to hear?
I don't know. You had something really good.
What was it?
I can't remember, but it made me remind you of the chimney story, my chimney story.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Dang, bummer.
I just completely skipped the story section for the week because I felt like our topic was going to take a decent bit of time, but I don't remember what it was.
Well,
no, I can. You know what? I'm going to talk about this bridge that never.
That's the story.
Ends.
That's
my
the
goodness.
story.
Okay, yeah. So let me
drill in the holes. Remember?
Let me just dive off into this a little bit. So we're putting this fence on a bridge parapet. All right. So the concrete wall on the side of a bridge. It's been there for a while. It's an old bridge, and they modified it and stuff like that a little bit. So we go out, start just take hammer drills out there, start drilling holes, and we're hitting rebar all over the place. So then I go back to we may have talked about this already. I don't know, but go back to the rep. And he's like, oh, well, let's get these rebar eaters. Try them. They didn't work. Go back, get some other type of hammer drill bits. Try that. It didn't work. So we're like, a week and a half or something like that, 2 weeks into it at this point, by the time we've like ordered and had stuff shipped and all. And so then we hire someone to go out and core drill holes. All right. And of the 150 or 160 holes, I think they had to core drill like 65 of them because we couldn't drill them. So they go out and they start core drilling holes all in this wall, and they got all of them except for like 2. And the last 2, they broke 3 core drill bits and 2 hammer drill bits in the hole and could not cut it to depth. So don't, if you're someone who knows about that job, just ignore that piece of it. We're going to put the fence in and it's going to be great. But anyways, so we're doing that. And the day that the core drill people finish, somebody goes behind them and starts filling the holes with grout. So somebody from like the contractor had sent somebody out there and told him to start filling some anchor holes because, they had to drill holes to mount the core drill machine up there. And so the holes they start filling are the ones that we've been working on cutting for a month. And so we go back the next day to start putting anchors in. And you drop an anchor in the hole and it goes like 1.5 inches down in the hole and hits grout. And so we had to go back with a hammer drill and re-drill all the holes again. And it's just been the one that never ends. But anyways, I think tomorrow we'll finally have all the anchors in. So we've made progress. We finally got it done. It only took us like 4.5 weeks to put in 160 anchors. And that's absolute insanity.
Wow. You probably had like 2 days.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, we've done, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 different jobs that are similar to this in the past, but we've never ran into these kind of issues. We've always been able to use a rebar eater or like a certain type of drill bit or something like that.
Old concrete, man. They got lime in it.
Somebody told me we need to take some of that rebar out and like put it in the Smithsonian or something because it's some kind of super metal. But all right, let's do the Italian. Did you want to tell a story?
Nope, we don't have time.
Let's do the Italian word for the week.
Italian word of the week.
Money.
Introducing Ilaria. Italian with Ilaria.
So what you got for us?
Soldi?
Soldi.
Saldi?
No, Dan, no.
What?
Try again.
You do it again.
Soldi.
Saudi.
No. Dan, come on. That was really bad. No, I'm not going to let you go with that one.
Saudi.
Soldi.
Saudi.
Yes, better.
That's a hard one. I don't know why. It sounds very simple. All right. So, Zach, let's get serious. Let's get down to business here.
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah. So, Zach, it's hard to tell if he's being serious or not. So we kind of joke around and tell him he has to hold a finger up if he's going to be serious. So, anyways, Alyssa, is she making fun of my Italian?
Yeah.
Well, I did my best. I'm sorry. All right. So there's been some talk about deposits. All right. And there's been a lot of questions. It's a very popular topic that people like to talk about, or not very popular, but somewhat popular.
We've talked about it a lot.
We have.
I'll go ahead and say that.
And so, first and foremost, I'd like to give a disclaimer. So, as with anything that we talk about on this show, it is simply our opinions based on our years of experience in this industry and working with general contractors. And, some of the general contractors are little local folks. Some of them are the largest ones in the world. And we've worked for everyone in between. And so that's kind of our disclaimer, right? And there are exceptions to everything, and things are going to work different in different parts of the country, in different parts of the world, all of that stuff. But what we can share is what we know to be true here.
Well, and also basically how we do business now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
and how we do business. Exactly. So that's like our commitment is to share the way that we do things ultimately, but hopefully we can pass along some learned lessons so that other people don't have to experience the pain of learning that. So I would say if you got any buddies in the local fence market and you got questions, you can ask them. If you think something might be different where you are, call them and ask them.
Right.
If you're looking at a job that you want to bid and you're not real sure that you can like pull it off without a deposit, call some contractors that are working on bidding it and ask them. Just because there's 6 contractors bidding it doesn't mean you have to bid to all 6 of them. You could find a couple of them that are willing to work with you the way that you need it to work and just go in it with them, 1 or 2, But yeah, you never get what you don't ask for.
That's right.
Yeah.
I do have a friend. I worked for this one specific contractor, and he wouldn't give me a deposit.
Mhm.
And then I just took it like at no and said, okay, you said no, and I didn't fight for it. And then a friend of mine, same contractor, similar type of work, architectural fence, and which basically is just a fancy word for saying fancy ornamental fence. I like to,
Yes,
the higher end ornamental fence, if you will. And same type of work, same contractor. And he basically just fought tooth and nail with the guy to get the deposit. And then
with the owner.
The contractor went to the owner
Right.
on behalf of the subcontractor.
So y'all know the way we do this, right? We come in here, we sit down. As you'll hear in a minute, I've done homework all week long preparing for this. Zach has no idea what's even like in the show notes or anything. And so, we kind of just like wing it. And it's kind of cool that he talks about stuff like this because this is like something that's in here, right? And so a lot of times we find that we just organically kind of get to stuff that's here, but that's cool.
It's experience based.
Yep.
So why wouldn't the note to reflect our experience?
Right. And so it's also cool that like that experience I wasn't a part of because you were somewhere else.
That's right.
And like it's also the same as the stuff I'm about to talk about here. So all right. So next disclaimer. We've done this kind of like we've had this conversation in the past, but in the commercial world, I believe there's clearly at least one separation, probably multiple. But there's like this general contractor commercial world that's kind of in like the public private sector area. And then you have like business to business commercial work. So a car lot down the street wants a fence around their property. Like that is still commercial, but that's business to business, not in the general contractor world. Typically, maybe it is, but normally. And then, so I've recently had some experience working on a GSA project, which has its own set of rules again. So that would be like, some federal government stuff the GSA is handling. And like, that's a whole interesting thing.
In preparation for this show, we also talked about the property maintenance company, bidding to the property maintenance company,
Right.
and how that goes. How would you qualify that?
So that kind of fits probably more with like the business to business
business.
business to business.
That's how you know, man, this man gets things done.
Yeah.
You do business. I don't even have time for all those extra letters.
Right. There's too many letters in there.
Let's get the job done.
Right.
Skip the wording.
I think it kind of fits more into there. And like that business to business world, I mean, you're working with an array of people. It might be a guy that owns a car lot, or it might be a nationwide company that owns 5,000 car lots. Right.
Right.
And like the way things operate with both of them in those two different situations is going to be different.
Well, the one that I'm thinking of in particular is a big medical manufacturer, distributor, whatever, testing lab, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And they use a property maintenance company
because they don't want to deal with it. So they treat the property maintenance company kind of as a general contractor just to get all of that stuff done. So they have one person they have to call.
So again, in this is another example of where they don't accept deposits. They also won't accept my repair contract.
Oh, really?
No,
a lot of times you'll see that people are like, no, you're going to sign our paperwork or that nothing's happening.
I've been duking it out with them, or basically just sticking to my guns on what the project you're asking. It's basically like 1,000 feet of repair. So some finials here, some pickets there, some welds here, some screws here, some shoes there, and so I'm, going to submit the repair contract that's time and materials, and they're just not having it.
So Brian, your comment or your post that I saw the other day is what motivated me to do this. We've talked about it several times. I just kind of wanted to circle back to it and try to clarify some stuff here. So feel free to let me know if you disagree with anything. So, sorry. I know, I just like stopped the train dead in its tracks. And I know you love that. So, yeah, property maintenance, like I said, to me, that's kind of in that like business to business world though, right? Yeah. And like they have their own set of rules. Ish. So like I said, all of that is everybody's going to have their own set of rules, right? There's a lot of different ways things get done. And I mean, there's a lot of like shady ways that things get done and stuff like that I've experienced. In fact, a dude asked me to do something I was uncomfortable with this week, and I just told him no. I said, sorry, I don't think that's realistic, and I don't think I'm comfortable with doing that.
Tell us what it is. Or don't. You're not comfortable doing that.
So basically, the guy wanted it was a contractor, and the vast majority of the project was fence. And he wanted me to put one of our people on his payroll so that he could report them being a superintendent on site, so he didn't have to send a superintendent to Memphis to be on site. And I was like, no, I don't think I want to do that.
Right.
So like I said, wasn't real comfortable about it or anything, but anyways, so I think in that business to business world, like you've already talked about with your property maintenance company that you're fighting with, they're not going to play game with getting a deposit, right? But in that world, I think you're a lot more likely to get a deposit out of people than you will be in the general contractor world. And we'll kind of get into that here in a minute. We don't really ask for deposits. I think there's some times where we just don't trust people and they want like a small repair or something like that. And we'll just make them pay up front 100% with a credit card if they want it done.
This recent experience I had, I wouldn't say I didn't trust him necessarily, but he said, we're working on getting the money. And I was like, in that case,
there's that red flag waving right there. Right. I mean,
we are something like, we'll have the rest of the money. Cause he asked what were the payment terms? When am I going to have to pay in full whenever? So, I did take a deposit. It was for church. I wanted to do the job, obviously, not just financially, but I've developed a relationship with the pastor over the course of the past 6 months of working to get him the product that he needs. And so in that circumstance, I did. But a lot of times, again, how we do business is for most churches and car lots is a lot of what I do as far as business to business here. I don't ask. I just don't ask.
Right.
because
Yeah,
we are in
and-
a position where we can afford that, really, I guess.
Yeah. And so that's the thing for me is like in that world, we don't really have a ton of experience in asking for deposits. I'm just making assumptions that like that's where I would probably be more successful when I did ask for them. Right.
Right.
Um, so I think there's going to be a lot of exceptions. We've talked about the property maintenance bit a bit, like large corporations, kind of like the nationwide 5,000 car lot place, like they have their processes, and it's really hard to get them to do something that's outside of like their normal
Right.
way of doing business. And I think it's because they have to go through so many levels up to get someone to approve it.
Right.
I mean, the person you're dealing with is going to have to go 6 levels up before they get to somebody that has the authority to approve it, and that's going to take 2 months to get it done and all of this. And like I think for that reason they simply just a lot of times say do it our way or don't do it.
Right. I had an experience like that where I compromised my typical business model, which is not subcontracting electrical work because of that situation. They were like, this is a really big job,
Mhm.
and this apparently the chain of command or whatever it has to go through to get another vendor approved in the process was going to be too painstaking. So they're like, we may have to find another fence company.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I work really closely with this particular electric company, so we'll
Mhm.
do it,
Right. Yeah, and that's the case a lot of times. So we subcontract our automation. We don't perform it in-house. And a lot of times in that world is where I see it the most, where somebody will call us and they have a gate that's, not working and they want a service call.
Right.
Well, I'll be like, hey, why don't you just call this dude directly? And I mean, I'll offer that up a lot of times. And you see that fairly common that they're like, oh, they're not a vendor and they're not set up, and it would take us 3 weeks to get them approved. Like, we need the gate fixed now, and so we'll do it and just sub it out.
Right.
And so, like I said, big corporate stuff, like they have their complications, right? Also, I think like, if you get into some kind of like government type stuff with like schools and the city or the county or something like that, I think you're going to find that they have their set of rules that they work under as well. And it's probably going to be a little more difficult. Now, again, I would say this is a big one that's going to vary across the country, right? I mean,
Right.
we're in Memphis, Tennessee, like a decently sized city. I think if you get into like smaller towns and stuff like that, I think the situation would be different. Again, don't really have much experience in that. I'm just assuming. So,
I'll ask Memphis Shelby County Schools next time for a
Right.
deposit and report back. Why
Right.
not?
So I did some homework this week, and this is what we're going to talk about now is going to be in the general contractor world. All right. So specifically, I want to talk about getting deposits in the general contractor world. And I can talk about our experience, and I can talk about the homework that I've done over the course of the past week. And so what I did was I've called 4 different project managers and construction managers, and I had the same conversation with all 4 of them. I basically conducted interviews in preparation for this. And so 2 of them work for nationwide general contractors. One of them is extra large and one of them is medium.
I like your sizing.
Yeah, yeah. I followed, American standard sizing
thank
here.
you.
So, and then I talked to a pretty local general contractor that I would say is like a medium to large size. And then I talked to a local construction manager who is employed by a company, okay, who is a construction management company for an owner.
Okay.
Right. I know that's kind of confusing, but their company is on staff full time for an owner, and they run construction management for this owner because their property has so many construction projects that happen constantly all the time. So they have a full team of people that do their construction management. So that's kind of the rundown. I don't, I try to avoid specifics on the show. I don't like name dropping, and I don't like company name dropping or any of that kind of stuff. So I try to be vague, but that's a little piece of a resume about who I talk to. So basically the question to all of them, well, I mean, it was probably a 30-minute conversation with each of the 4 of them, but ultimately the question I wanted to get to is specifically about deposits. And So it was kind of funny. I call them up, and there was like 2 of them. I think one of them we were bidding a job to, and another one
Right.
we had a job that we had kind of been like working on off and on for a while or whatever.
I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend.
Right. So they're all like, "Is this about such and such job?" I was like, "No, it's
I
not."
just need a little bit of money, please.
And so at the beginning of the conversation, I told him, I was like, "Look, we do this podcast." I said, I have this software company. Like, I find myself in a situation where people ask me questions. I mean, I've done a little bit of like
Right.
classes and stuff.
Just so you know, this doesn't affect the current job we're doing for
Right.
you.
So I went through that whole kind of intro piece with all 4 of them, and they were still confused. I was like, "No, remember, this is so I can share the information with others." But anyways, so
So how much money do you need, Dan?
right. It was pretty interesting with a couple of them there. But anyways, so what I learned is typically there's a contract between the general contractor and the owner. And normally that contract says that the general contractor will bill and be paid once a month for work that is in place. Okay. So already their contract doesn't allow for any kind of upfront payments, any kind of deposits, anything like that. It's only work that they can step out on their property and see in place. Right. Now, again, there's a ton of exceptions to that rule. Stored material is going to be one that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but that's a big one that's an exception to that. So then when we receive a contract from a general contractor, it will say something similar, like we can bill every month and we will be paid when they get paid. So we're a pay when paid. That varies by state. So some of them are like pay if paid. I don't fully understand the difference in those, just to be real honest with you, because they sound very similar, but they have some kind of different meaning, right? But anyways, we're going to get paid after the general contractor gets paid. So if the owner doesn't pay them for 3 months, I can't like file a lien on anything, or I can't sue the general contractor or none of that, because I've signed a contract that says that I will pay them, or I will get paid after they get paid. All right. So now here's where some exceptions start coming into this, like, no, we're not paying deposits kind of stuff. They say that there are highly specialized trades that nationwide require deposits. And I've got a couple of examples here. So one of them said they did a temple. All right. And there was stone in the temple that was mined from in Jerusalem and shipped to the US to go into this temple. They said for that, the supplier in Jerusalem required 100% payment upfront before they would even start a machine to mine it. So it wasn't like you got to pay us before the ship leaves or none of that kind of stuff. But before we're even going to start working, you have to pay us upfront. So obviously the general contractor went back to the owner and they're like, "Hey, you wanted this stuff. Like, this is what we got to do to make it happen." So pretty cool. And then also, like, there's some companies that make like a really high-end custom millwork stuff that also require deposits before they'll start anything. Art was one of the things that they talked about, like really high-end custom stuff. So kind of in your world that you lived in before,
Right.
deposits,
Which would explain why it was so easy for me.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Easier.
Right. So deposits in that world are more commonplace, but one of them listed off like 10 trades, and fence was included in one of them. He's like, "I ain't paying no deposit to electrician, to a plumber, to a landscaper, to the fence guy. Like, I ain't paying no deposits on that stuff, you know?" Again, exceptions, things happen. But one cool story that I heard another cool story was about like the elevator and escalator companies. Right. So apparently the same contractors install elevators and escalators, and there's only a handful of them in the country.
Wow.
And so they're all in cahoots. I just quoted for those of you that can't see. And they all require deposits. And so their pay schedule is something like this. 50% due before they will start submittals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start doing that.
Isn't that cool? 50% before we're going to do submittals, and then 25% after submittals, but before fabrication. And then the final 25% is due when it's installed.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. I mean, coming like we fabricate ornamental fence here. And I just think about like, man, if we could bill 50% for us to do submittals, that's crazy. But again, we're kind of, so I feel like what I kind of learned about our world is that we're kind of like in the middle, right? Because we do fence, but we also do custom built fence that is all like we buy raw steel and make it into fence. And so I don't know. I feel like there may be some possibility for like some deposit conversations in that world.
Right.
And I'll kind of tie back into that here in a minute again. But one of them said something specifically about that. And he's like, if it was some really high end custom built, made by hand fenced, and yeah, I think we might be willing to pay a deposit on something like that. And I was like, every ornamental job we've ever done for you was handmade, high end custom fence, right? And the guy's like,
Right.
So, anyways,
I thought this was all theoretical, Dan.
Right. Oh yeah. But you said you weren't talking about any of your jobs, right?
Right.
So,
That's right.
But yeah. So that was pretty interesting to hear that like there is maybe some potential in that world. And they did tell me like if your deposit is a few $1,000s, they're probably not going to sweat it much, right? They're just going to pay it and just move on with it. But when you start getting into like bigger contracts, then that's when things are going to get to be a little bit sticky here. So anytime that you ask for a decent sum of money from a contractor as a deposit, the process will kind of go like this. You're going to request it from the general contractor. They may deny it immediately, right? But if they entertain it, then what they'll do is they'll go to the owner and they'll request it from the owner, and they'll take whatever documentation and reasoning that you give, and they'll take that to the owner and they'll say, hey, my fence guy wants a deposit, here's the reason. And then the owner will either approve or deny it. And then if the owner approves it, they're going to pay the general contractor, who is then going to pay you. But they were pretty clear to me that the general contractor is not coming out of pocket any deposits. Right. And I heard some comments about how, like, well, you subcontractors, y'all are the ones really financing these jobs. General contractors, we ain't gonna finance nothing. And I was like, oh yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And so interestingly enough, now we finance jobs, but also with no interest, right?
Right.
And also we provide insurance for jobs as well. That whole primary non-contributory thing we talked about the other day.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, there's that side of the world too. They indeed will, in situations, move along to the next bidder. If you require a deposit and there's somebody that's, a 0.25% higher than you, they're probably just going to move along. Right. Now, again, this is what I'm being told based on my, interviews that I conducted. This is the information I've gotten from them. So they will move along sometimes. One scenario that I felt like everybody pretty much agreed with was that if the cost savings was enough to justify the effort and the interest that the owner possibly would incur on like a building loan or something like that, then that's when they would strongly consider paying deposits.
Right.
Right. So if you come in and you're 10 or 15% lower than the other fence people, and you say, well, I have to have a deposit. And I mean, let's say it's a $10,000 job and you're 10% lower. Nah. If it's $200,000 job and you're 10% lower, like at that point, it might be worth it. Right. So what would happen in that situation is the owner would expect the general contractor to convince them that the fence guy is trustworthy enough to give them a deposit on the front end.
Right.
And so having evidence like we've worked with these people before, they've always done a good job. They've showed up when they were supposed to be there. They've got the job done, Like, the general contractor being able to basically like vet you is going to be a part of that. So that is the situation that I felt like all of them agreed on. So really, I think tell me if you think this is right, but I think I came up with 2 situations. One, you're significantly cheaper, all right, or enough cheaper to make the struggle worth it,
Right.
the extra effort and energy it takes to make that worth it. The other situation is if you're buying something that's like a specialty product.
Right.
We've bought some louvered gates in the past, and for a few gates, $40,000-$50,000 we had to pay, and it had to be paid before they would ship us the gates. We just did it, right? I never even asked if we could get a deposit. Feel like that would be a situation where the contractor could go to the owner, the
Yeah,
owner
you'd
would
have
pay.
some
Right.
viable representation of what you need the deposit for.
That's
Not
right.
just, I actually don't have any money
Right.
and I can't afford to pay my men the time it's going to take to get to the
Right.
50% complete or the first 30-day billing cycle or whatever.
Yep. Yep. And so in that situation, I think that's a pretty good reason why you would go and say, hey, I need some money before you have anything to show for it. Right. But I would say the key part of all of this is communicate any situation like this as early as possible. Right. I said earlier, if you're looking at a job that you're thinking about bidding, pick up the phone and call some general contractors and ask them if they'd be willing to work with you on deposit. Same
Right.
thing. If you have some specialty stuff that you have to order and it has to be paid up front or anything like that, I would certainly put that on my proposal. I bid a job not too long ago and I put on the proposal, like, if I'm awarded this job, you're going to sign a joint check agreement.
Right.
I mean, yeah, a joint check agreement with my supplier, right? Because it was a significant amount of
So
material.
obviously, you run the risk of the wasted resources that you've committed to bidding the job and pulling your hair out and all that stuff,
Yeah.
pencil sharpening and whatnot.
Right.
Then also, the information we received was that if you get up to you won the contract and then ask for deposit, the answer will be no.
That's right. I asked that question
Of
as
the
well.
people that we spoke to.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I asked that question and I said, hey, so what happens if I give you a bid for a $300,000 job, right? You come back and you want to award this $300,000 job to me. And then I say, oh, yeah, by the way, I need 50% deposit. Well, if that was never disclosed up until that point, there's a fairly decent chance they're going to just tell me to go away.
Right.
Now, again, every situation's different, right? You never know. Maybe you're the only fence guy that would even do it. Maybe you were 300,000 and the next one was 400. Now, that also is a red flag. If you're that far off, it's a red flag. And so I talked about that with a couple contractors too. And they say, look, if it's that much lower than the next bid, we're going to do some research on that thing and try to figure out why is it that much lower.
Right.
Right. Because I mean, they're not dumb.
Well, and you and I have both gotten the call that's like, hey, man, and this is from people I've had a relationship with over some years, but like, hey, man, do you think you may have missed something on this job?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or, hey, there was another 1,000 feet of fence over here that you didn't include. And I'm like, oh, crap. Like, thanks for letting me know.
Right.
But
because their contract may say covers whole scope of work.
Oh, it certainly would say that, right? And if they wanted to go that route, then they could probably just hang you out to dry.
Dan missed that 1,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put that covers whole scope of work on there.
I've never experienced that. I've never been in a situation where, I felt like somebody maliciously or intentionally knew that I left something off and proceeded without ever mentioning it. I've never been in that situation, but I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, me either. No, the only thing I've really gotten was like, the number looked a little lower than the other guys, and you think you may have missed some stuff.
Right. Yep. So, yeah. Yep. Like I said, subcontractors, we finance the job. So now if you can't get a deposit, let's say you try, you talk to contractors, all of that stuff, you can't get a deposit. So what you can do is you can kind of like front load the job a little bit. That can be tricky in the fence world too, because immediately what anybody's going to kind of think of, or what a lot of people would think of, is like mobilization.
Right.
Well, I mean, if the job is 15 minutes from the shop and like all you have to do is put material in a truck and drive there, kind of hard to convince people that you have mobilization. Now if you're a dirt contractor and you've got 8 pieces of equipment that you have to get hauled on site and all of this stuff, and it takes you 3 days to get out there, like that's mobilization. Um, so you might be able to do something like that. You might be able to bill some for submittals. You might have to get a little creative. And again, just call and talk to like the project manager or something like that. And uh, I don't know. I'd say there's a better than 50-50 shot that they're going to give you some advice or maybe point you in the right direction. Some of them wouldn't, but hopefully you get a hold of one that would be willing to talk to you about it and all of that. Call some other fence folks.
Right.
What have you used in the past to kind of front load a job? And I mean, just ask them. And I mean, I think we're kind of in the age now where people are pretty comfortable with sharing stuff.
Yeah, that's one big thing that we've talked about. Vendor relations, we've talked about customer relations. I think having relationships with contractors, project managers, the ability that you have, the relationship, the transparency that you've developed over the years working for these general contractors, that you could just call them and ask them this question. I mean, to have people like that and use the networking for that. It's not all about the networking. It's not always all about this may potentially turn into a sale. I mean, that is true too, but I'm always thinking that, but at the same time, like the networking aspect of this, I have a friend that was a superintendent on a job we did. And I talked to him about what we're doing to hear his insight from the other side,
Yeah. Right. And so I have a decent bit of experience with that, right? Because, I was on officer of the local AGC chapter and all of that
Right.
stuff. And I mean, I can say from going in there and just knowing different estimators, project managers, people that own general contracting companies, things like that. I mean, it really gives you a lot of a network that you can call people to. Right. And so I think I'm a big advocate for that. Right. I mean, if you got questions, there's nothing like being able to pick up the phone and call and get 2 or 3 different perspectives on something that you're struggling with.
Right.
I mean, you may have like, I think you're like, oh, I have this situation. I'm going to call and ask Zach. And then, so Zach is the one person I ask. And then a week later, oh man, I got this situation. I'm going to call and ask Zach. Like maybe Zach knows, maybe Zach doesn't. Zach can certainly share his opinion with me, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to get 2 or 3 opinions and just kind of see what different people think. So I think that whole networking thing is important from that perspective, both inside the fence industry. We've not talked about that at all, I believe. But inside the fence industry, you can achieve those same things. And now if you have 6 or 8 different fence people you can call and ask, like now that's somebody that's like, your peer, right?
Right.
And so I think that's probably even better than maybe in some situations, even better than being able to call a general contractor.
Sure.
Now, I think there's value in both of them. I think it's important to network with people all over the place, right? I think networking is a big deal. We don't do enough of it.
Right.
So
That's right.
But-
Bill for stored materials.
Yeah.
That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. Take pictures.
Right. So normally, in my experience, when we bill for stored materials, we have to provide pictures and we have to provide insurance, which is, I think the coverage is called like property of others or something like that. So when you bill for stored materials, at some point, either when you bill it or when you get paid, I don't exactly know. I'm not a lawyer, but at some point during that process, the material goes from being yours to being theirs. Right. So they take ownership of it because they paid for it. Sometimes you have to do like a bill of sale and all this other stuff. And so now your insurance has to cover property that belongs to someone else that's in your possession.
Right.
So that's a summary or in a nutshell, kind of what that is. Pictures, definitely. Sometimes, some situations, they want you to put a tag on it. And they will send representatives to your facility to inspect the material to ensure that it is indeed what it's supposed to be. It's tagged, it's theirs, and it's the right quantities. So I've seen that before. And then what seems to have kind of gotten a little bit more common here in the recent years is that owners or general contractors or a combination of the two will require that we pay for the material before we can bill for it.
Right.
And so we have some customers who require that we send them like invoice, proof of payment, and some kind of form. I don't know that it's a lien waiver at that point, but some sort of form, definitely, just to even send them a bill.
Right.
Right. And so normally the lien waiver would come like before they would send the check. We'll have to be able to say like, oh, here's a lien waiver from our suppliers. And that's what would release them to send us payment. Even in that situation, we still have paid for it, right? In order for a supplier to sign a lien waiver, you have to pay for the material. So Dawn says that's a supplier waiver, but the suppliers also sign lien waivers. So, yeah,
We're going to put Dawn's phone number up there.
yeah, no,
So that
just call her.
if you have any questions about any of this language, call Dawn.
Right. Yeah, so that seems to be something that's kind of happens more nowadays than it used to. But I think a very important thing also, we've talked a lot about the cash flow, the billing. Now we've talked about deposits in pretty decent length here. Something that's really important is to make sure that your bill is done properly and turned in on time. If you turn that bill in a day late, guess what? Now it goes in the next month's billing cycle.
$1 short.
Yeah, day late and $1 short. Just kicked us back a month. And cash.
So did that happen to you? It's happened to you. And and how did that result for you? Do you have any like negative repercussions that you remember?
I mean, the worst negative repercussions for me are like laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'm paying payroll.
Right.
That's the negative repercussion for me.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yep. And it'll catch up with you, man. Like you get on, if you're doing one, let's say, everything's in perspective, right? So a big job for one person might be $20,000. A big job for somebody else might be $20 million, right? It's all in perspective. But say you go out and you bid 10 big jobs, you get 5 contracts back and 3 of them want you there at the same time.
Right. We know this.
We do. We experience that frequently. I don't know how that happens, but it's like, man, when it rains, it pours kind of thing, and so it always, they kind of will wind up stacking on top of each other pretty frequently. And that's like cash flow for one job is a struggle. Now, cash flow for 2 or 3 jobs really becomes a struggle. So just none of this is to scare anybody, right? This is all just to give you the information so that you can be prepared and how to plan for what you're getting into.
Right.
That's it. That's all we're trying to do. And so, man, look at that. Aaron.
Hello, Aaron.
From the cybersecurity episode we did a while back.
Thanks
What's
for
up,
popping
Aaron?
by, Aaron.
So, yeah, like I said, we're not trying to scare anybody. So just understand what you're getting into. Be prepared for it. Like that's the biggest thing is this is all telling you what you need to be prepared for, not what to be scared of. So, yeah, anyways, back to the bill thing. Make sure you get it in correctly and on time. Most of the time, people are going to call you and tell you that your bill was wrong or, have you fix it and submit it again
Or
and stuff like
in
that.
other circumstances, you're just sitting there anxiously awaiting the day the check arrives, then call to find out where it is. And they tell you, oh, our apologies, sir. You didn't fill out the paperwork properly.
Don't think they would start that with an apology.
Try to give them the benefit of the doubt.
That's a super jerk move by General Contractor, in my opinion. But
so I had that happen to me once, and in their defense, they were so busy, I guess, disorganized. It was just like we didn't realize that you hadn't done it.
How do they not realize?
I don't know.
They have a bill in their hand that they didn't give to the owner.
Right.
How do you not realize?
Well, maybe that's just how she painted the picture because she felt bad. You
right.
know? When I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay anybody.
Right. Oh, no, how I'm going to pay that payroll. Oh. Yeah, for real. It's a real thing that can happen.
I didn't even say hello. I said, hey, how am I going to pay that payroll? Hey, just calling about how I'm going to pay that payroll.
So just make sure you get everything right. And if I would say if you're kind of new to the world and new to like doing this whole pay app stuff and all of that stuff, just like maybe send it to them and then call them. Call them and be like, hey, I sent my bill in. Can you look at it and make sure I did everything right, please?
I mean, I like doing that most things.
Yeah. So it definitely doesn't hurt to just ask them, right?
Cool.
Like if they're not rude, then they're going to be willing to like work with you or whatever.
So we have some cash flow agenda, and we're nearing the hour mark.
Yeah. So we're almost there, man. We're almost.
Good deal.
We are at the hour and 1 minute mark right now.
That's
actually.
right.
So, but yes, I've had that experience you're talking about as well. Right. I've had the situation where we sent in a bill and then didn't get paid and picked up the phone and called them. And they're like, oh, well, you didn't fill out this form. You didn't put the right number in this spot. You didn't do this. And man, you want to talk about something frustrating, right? Because at that point, you're like 45 days into waiting on money or 60 days or whatever the case may be. And now, like, where is it? Oh, we'll put it in this month's billing cycle. Now, late, I've been late plenty of times. That's on me. I can't say nothing about them doing anything wrong. If I send it in late, that's mine. But I mean, I also I filled out the form wrong, and that's on me too, I guess. But I would say just call them and follow up. Be like, hey, I want to make sure I did it right. And that's it. So that's our take on the whole deposit piece, and hopefully that was of some benefit. Again, not trying to scare you. Don't be afraid. There's just so many people out there that do it. Like, it's not like I'm not a super smart person, right? I'm not smarter than every other fence guy out there. I just have done it and have been down that road several times and just kind of have learned the rules, right? And that's the big thing is just you got to just figure out how to do it along the way. And I like how, there's this thing of like do something uncomfortable every now and then. I think that can somehow apply to this, right? Maybe do something you're a little uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
But just know what you're getting into. So, and I think that's it, man. You got anything?
No, man.
All right.
I made a motion to close like 5 minutes ago.
I know, but I had to finish. So, all right. You want to close us out here?
Thank you guys for joining us. Give a little Dan in there. Get Dan in there. See this camaraderie.
Sorry, I had to applaud too.
Yep. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out. If you have questions or anything, just let us know. I mean, I've kind of been like trying to do this thing now where I just kind of like watch these Facebook groups and I just kind of see what people are talking about. I had
what better way to poll our prospective audience, right?
Right. I mean, that's apparently what's important in the world. And so I try to go on there and comment and be like, hey, we'll talk about that this week on our show. Cool. I don't always do it. So that'll be the plan is I'll kind of watch it and, try to answer some questions that I see that pop up that are relevant to what we're talking about and that we know about. So
thanks to all the listeners, watchers, everybody who stopped by for commenting, anybody who's given us high fives, hugs, or support in person. Hope to see all y'all out there at the AFA. That's pretty much all we're doing right now, but maybe in the future we'll be doing some other events. Hope to see everybody soon. Thank you guys. We couldn't do it without you.
Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.